you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
For Bev Turner Today on GB News. If you are recovering from the Christmas party weekend with a 2-day hangover, I've got no sympathy. Stay on the sofa and we will do all the thinking for you. Did you see the World Cup final? It was an absolute belter. Handball, extra time, penalty shootouts, and Lionel Messi lifting the trophy before Gary Neville brought us all crashing down to earth with a speech about nurses. We're going to be discussing all of that this morning. Plus, we find out in half an hour whether the government's Rwanda plan is or is not legal. That will be hot off the press with Mark White. The BBC are releasing a Shamima Begum podcast series next year. Discuss. And did Jeremy Clarkson go too far in calling for Meghan Markle to be paraded down the street and pelted with excrement? I think it's all rather funny, do you? All that and two beautiful opinionated guests to tackle the biggest stories. That's all after the news headlines.
A very good morning to you. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The Nurses Union says the Health Secretary will have to carry the can if patients suffer as a result of NHS strikes. The RCN has threatened further industrial action in the new year if ministers don't respond to their demands within 48 hours of tomorrow's walkout. Steve Barclay says he's open to talks ahead of the strike action this week, but the Health Secretary suggested the government will not budge on pay. He's put the onus on unions to ensure they supply sufficient emergency cover so patients can get the care they need. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, told us the ministers need to start negotiating.
We would actually have a serious conversation with our NHS staff. We've not got that at the moment. You've said that Steve Barclay is saying he's prepared to talk. Well, let's see if we actually see that. But as I say, it feels to me they've gone into lockdown while the country grounds to a halt. That's not good enough.
High Court judges will rule today whether the government's policy to send illegal immigrants to Rwanda is lawful. The government's been criticised for the plan to send asylum seekers there, with charities claiming the East African nation lacks a fair and efficient asylum system. 2 judges at the Royal Courts of Justice will give their ruling on the legal challenge this morning. The Prime Minister is going to use his trip to the Baltic region to urge fellow leaders to stand firm in their support for Ukraine. Rishi Sunak has touched down in Latvia, where he'll meet Northern European allies to discuss boosting their defence aid against Russia. He'll then travel to Estonia to meet British troops. It comes as the UK announced £250 million of contract of fresh ammunition as part of its defensive aid package for 2023. A teenager's due in court charged with facilitating attempted illegal entry to the UK. It's after 4 people died when a migrant boat capsized in the English Channel last Wednesday. 39 others were rescued and safely taken to shore on the Kent coast. 19-year-old Ibrahim Bar will appear before Folkestone Magistrates Court today. More than 130 bus companies are going to cap single fares to help passengers amid the cost of living crisis. National Express and Stagecoach are among companies which will introduce the £2 upper limit for fares in England outside London from next year. It's to help people who are travelling for work, education and medical appointments. The scheme is being backed with a £60 million worth of government funding. 20 million cars are estimated to hit the motorways this week as people travel to see family over the Christmas period. The RAC says traffic will be especially bad on Friday and Saturday and say it will be made worse by the ongoing wave of strikes across rail services. Thousands of RMT members were going to walk out from 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve until the 27th of December. The RAC predicts almost 8 million journeys will be made over the 2 days before Christmas Day. Russian drone attacks have left 3 regions in Ukraine without power after critical infrastructure was hit early this morning. Ukrainian authorities say their air defence systems destroyed about 15 of 20 drones directed at Kyiv. The mayor of the region, Vitaly Klitschko, says engineers are working to quickly stabilise the energy and heat supply. It follows Friday's 70 missile strikes, which was Russia's biggest air assaults since the start of the war. Elon Musk could step down as the boss of Twitter just 2 months after buying the social media site. Well, it follows a poll that he launched on the platform yesterday asking Twitter users whether or not he should step down as the chief executive. 57% of 40 million voters said yes. Musk had faced criticism since taking over Twitter, including over his decisions around content moderation. Argentina have won their first World Cup since 1986, beating France in yesterday's final. Well, that was the reaction. It was a thrilling match which saw extra time and a painful penalty shootout. Lionel Messi scored twice in a 3-3 draw that featured a hat-trick for France's Kylian Mbappe. Argentina's keeper saved one, while another shot from France went in wide. Many are considering it to be one of the greatest finals in history. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for choosing us. Here is what's coming up on the show today. Even though we weren't in it, the World Cup final did not disappoint. What a match. Lionel Messi finally got his tiny little hands on the World Cup with Argentina beating France after a torturous penalty shootout. France's Mbappe took Sir Geoff Hurst's hat-trick record, but it wasn't enough for his team. Ex-England international footballer Danny Mills will join me to reflect on the drama in just a moment. And a Shamima Begum podcast is launching on BBC Sounds next year. They say that the series seeks to separate facts from fiction as it explores who is Shamima Begum, how did she get to Syria and what did she do when she got there? Is this a good use of BBC licence fee money? Let me know. And the skipper of the fishing vessel involved in the rescue of dozens of migrants after their boat capsized in the English Channel has criticised the government's immigration policy. In an exclusive interview with GB News, he says that authorities are acting as a migrant taxi service, encouraging more people to make the journey. We'll hear what he has to say before 11 a.m. And of course, let me know what you think too, gbviews@gbnews.uk. While you're online, vote in our Twitter poll. Was Gary Neville right to comment on UK politics during the World Cup coverage last night whilst working for ITV? If you haven't seen what he said, stick around. At the moment, 89% of you say that he had no place to say that. Do let me know what you think, won't you? But first up, strikes. The General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing, Pat Cullen, has warned Rishi Sunak that if the government doesn't negotiate over pay this week, nurses will return to the picket lines in January. It comes ahead of another 48-hour walkout by the nurses tomorrow. Ambulance drivers will then strike on Wednesday. So with us now to discuss how bad the situation is for Rishi Sunak is our political reporter, Olivia Otley. It's just what he needs in the run-up to Christmas, isn't it? It's chaotic, Olivia.
Yeah, it's completely chaotic and there is very little wiggle room left now. What happened in Scotland was the Scottish Government agreed to a one-off pay rise for nurses, which managed to avert the nurses' strikes. And Pat Cullen, the Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing, is saying that if the government here could only do the same thing, she would call off the nurses' strikes here. The problem is, of course, that offering a one-off pay rise to all English nurses, there are a lot more of them than there are Scottish nurses, and the government here thinks that that is pretty much unaffordable. But that was pretty much the last option on the table. So it's quite hard to see now how we can find a way through this. And meanwhile, of course, Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, who has a pretty terrible relationship with Pat Cullen anyway, he's distracted at the moment trying to keep life-preserving care going during the ambulance strikes, which are taking place later this week, which are actually posing more of a risk to public health than the nurses' strikes. So how he's managing to do those two things at the same time and prevent another fresh wave of January strikes, it's very, very hard to see.
Isn't it? I'm just looking at the breaking news from about 5 or 10 minutes ago that union leaders are dismissing the chances of a last-minute talk being able to avert the ambulance strike. This, like you say, they've reached a deadlock, particularly when it comes to the ambulances, it looks, at the moment. Where do they go now, Olivia? What can they do?
Well, yeah, particularly the ambulances is the problem. Actually, Steve Barclay is now saying to the ambulance strikers that they should be taking a leaf out of Pat Cullen's book and at least offering some sort of life-preserving care while the ambulance strikes are going on. That is how bad the situation is. He wishes it was more like the nurses' strikes, which were obviously causing him quite a headache as well. In the sort of medium to long term, the best hope is this legislation, which Rishi Sunak keeps talking about, which would basically curtail the rights of strikers and ensure that some sort of minimum service is provided during strikes. But as yet, there's no actual timescale on it. We just keep hearing it's going to be in the new year. And of course, Rishi Sunak isn't that powerful. There'd be plenty of Labour MPs, of course, who want our striking laws to stay exactly as they are. And there are plenty of Tory MPs who are worried about unravelling that right to strike because they're worried about their public sector constituents who are terrified of, not being able to pay their bills. So that's the sort of hopeful option for the long term. That depends, of course, on the public not supporting the strikes anymore. And we are beginning to see a little bit of movement in that direction, at least from the rail strikes. But in the short term, very hard to know what Rishi Sunak can possibly do.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia Otley. And in the meantime, just be careful. I mean, it's the season of accidents, isn't it? People doing stupid things and drinking too much, needing ambulances. They may not be there, so just take care. Now, the World Cup came to a dramatic close last night with Argentina claiming victory over France in a final that is being called the best in the tournament's history. Lionel Messi finally got his hands on the trophy. The former England international Danny Mills joins me on the show now. In his Argentina top, Danny Mills, good to see. Now, where were you last night? Where were you watching the match?
I was sat at home watching it, and what a game. I mean, I know it's maybe a bit controversial, Englishmen wearing Argentina top, but I think it's a tribute to Lionel Messi and how amazing and great he has been, not just in this tournament, but over the course of the last, 15, 20 years.
Yeah, because I'm not a massive football fan, Danny. I think we established that last time I interviewed you, that I knew nothing about what I was talking about. But last night, it was a Sunday night, it was horrible outside, there was no reason to go anywhere. I sat on the sofa, and this was the kind of football that drew you in, didn't it, as a viewer? It had absolutely everything. And I think anybody by the end of it, I mean, we were all fairly, I guess, impartial, but I wanted Argentina to win by the end. They showed heart, didn't they, and spirit.
For the first 75, 80 minutes, I thought they were absolutely magnificent. I thought the way that they played, the energy, everything was almost perfect. And then just goes to show how you can get everything right in football, and then one moment, that's all it comes down to. It's not always about tactics, it's not always about anything else. France get a penalty, Mbappe scores it. 90 seconds later, he scores a magnificent volley. That makes it obviously 2 each. Then it goes to extra time. You then think Messi has won it in that time. Only for France to equalise again from the penalty spot. And it's just fabulous. It had everything. It had drama.
Really did.
Oh, Mbappe scored a hat-trick, obviously, which we haven't seen since 1966 when Sir Geoff Hurst won it for England. It really did have absolutely everything. An incredible game of football.
You know, Danny, the story that I felt like the commentators didn't pick up on enough, obviously I don't know anything about football and suddenly I became an expert commentator. I think there's a few of us, right? There was the Montiel is his name. So this is the Argentinian guy whose handball, with desperate measures, does that handball in the penalty box. France get the penalty and then equalise, right? He, at that point, is thinking, I'm never going to be able to walk down the streets of Argentina again. This is terrible. And then, of course, he was the guy that hit that final penalty that took them to victory. His story on the night was amazing, wasn't it?
Oh, it is. But sadly, you know, when you get a quiz question in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years' time, who scored the winning penalty for Argentina, nobody will have a clue, unfortunately. You know, there'll be a few anoraks out there that remember it. This will always be remembered for the Messi and Mbappe final. Simple as that. You know, of course it takes a team and everybody else. But yeah, so many little stories. Martinez, the goalkeeper, you know, all sorts of antics, throwing the ball away. Some people have criticised him. I wouldn't. You do everything you possibly can to win that game. And I mean, okay, maybe not the most appropriate gesture in the world.
For anybody that didn't see it, sorry to interrupt you, Danny, but for anybody that didn't see it, just explain what he did, because if you blink, you might have missed it.
Yeah, obviously, during the penalties, he threw the ball away several times, all sorts. But then, of course, he wins the Golden Glove for the most clean sheets in the tournament for the best goalkeeper. And yeah, he put the trophy maybe somewhere where he probably shouldn't. Certainly not in Qatar with everything else that's gone on at the moment.
No, absolutely. It was the fact that, I don't know who the French player was, but he was meant to, the goalie had walked away with the ball, hadn't he? And the French player walks up to the spot to take it. And at that point, the goalie's meant to toss him the ball back. And he just threw it away. And you could see him go, you idiot, what are you doing? And he walked over, gave him an extra 20 feet.
He stepped up and obviously it got in his head. He didn't strike his penalty particularly well. But you have to say, that's great gamesmanship. He didn't throw the ball miles away. It's not like he had to go to the stands to retrieve it. It was 10 yards to one side. He got booked. I think he got booked for some of his antics as well. But it's all about winning. You know, you're talking about the greatest moment in football history for yourself and for your country. Why would you not do everything possible? So yeah, he might get some detractors, but in my opinion, he did everything to win. Made some fantastic saves in the game right at the very last minute. Kept them in the game, also in the game against the Netherlands as well, saved the penalties in that. All of those Argentina players, you know, absolutely amazing. But just look at his face. You know, it's childlike, isn't it? And I think that's what takes us back to
picture.
You know, childhood memories of winning World Cups or being able to play in one. He still has that sort of that cheeky, chappy nature, and I don't think any harm was done.
So, Danny, off the pitch, obviously there was this huge amount of controversy that Qatar were hosting the World Cup anyway. By all accounts, I was listening to our reporter Paul Hawkins on GB News the other day, who was saying that actually it will go down as one of the most successful, certainly one of the safest World Cups ever, because there was no alcohol in the stadium. Do you think there will be other countries and cities around the world now scratching their heads and thinking, is this how we should do every major football tournament?
Possibly. It's been talked about for some time, but I think it's also about social responsibility. Go back to 2002 when it was held in Japan. Very little trouble in Japan. You know, the nation, the culture, incredibly respectful, quite reserved in many, many ways. You know, you don't have to go to a game and get absolutely blind drunk so you forget and you've got no idea what happened in the game when you wake up the next morning. So, yeah, obviously a lot of controversy. Should it or shouldn't it not have been there? It was there. You know, the football was always going to be fantastic, you know, and it was. It doesn't matter. You could hold the World Cup on the moon. The football is still going to be fantastic. Yeah. You know, so there are lots of other issues. Now it's down to Qatar to take on those issues.
And talking of controversy, I don't know whether Gary Neville is a mate of yours, Danny Mills, but he obviously waded in his moment afterwards in the punditry moment after the football, and basically drew this comparison between the workers in Qatar corruption in this country, corruption in the Qatari government, and British strikers. Now, strikers, I mean, I don't mean a football version, I mean a working version of striker. Was he right to do so?
I don't think so. You have a platform, and as a pundit, as a person on telly, you clearly have opinions, but there are people better read, better versed, understand all the situations in this. We saw it at the start of the World Cup with BBC, not putting out, not showing the opening ceremony on the main channel, and then a bit of a monologue from Gary Lineker. Yes, it's okay to have opinions, but if you want to do that, do it on your own social media channels, because I think you have more influence. And when you start getting into mixed politics right across the board, I think it's very, very dangerous to do so.
OK, thanks so much. Danny Mills, honorary Argentinian for the day there. Thanks for joining us. We've been asking you this morning as well how you feel about Gary Neville saying these things. We've got a poll running at the moment. A lot of you are saying that you don't think he was right to make these comments. Cast your vote now, won't you? Absolutely not, says one tweeter. He's entitled to his opinion, and if he wants to air it on Twitter or Politics Live, be my guest. However, football coverage is meant to be for the whole country, regardless of our different politics, and his comment was divisive. Keep politics out of football. Lee Anderson MP went on Twitter and called him out for it, and Gary Neville shot back and said he was quite glad that he'd upset Conservative MP Lee Anderson. We're going to have Lee Anderson on the show within the next 45 minutes or so to talk about that. So let me know what you think as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, after the break, I'm going to be moving over to the Breakfast Bar to discuss the biggest stories of the day with my panel. I am very excited to be joined by Narinder Kaur and Tonya Buxton, two women as opinionated as they are beautiful. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instinct was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Bev Turner today on GB News. My guests are here. I am delighted to have her back. I invited her back, would you believe it? Broadcaster Narinder Kaur is here, and broadcaster, author, freedom fighter Tonya Buxton. Good morning, ladies. What do you think of our Christmas decorations?
I love it. Beautiful.
Good, excellent. Yeah, no expense spared, all natural. Just like us, Tonya.
I was about to say just like us.
Now, what we're talking about first, we're going to talk about Jeremy Clarkson caused all sorts of controversy this weekend. He wrote a piece about the Meghan and Harry documentary. And, of course, it's Jeremy Clarkson. He is one of the funniest writers we've ever produced, regardless, I think, of what you think about him as a character, what you think about him.
How is he funny?
He's the best journalistic writer. His books have me weeping. He's a wordsmith beyond compare. Did he go too far? Because he said, I don't hate... Let me find my little quote. One of you two's probably got it.
Paraded naked through the streets while people throw... poo at her, basically.
Yeah, so
I don't hate her like I hate Nicola Sturgeon
Here we go.
or Rose West. I hate her on a cellular level. At night, I'm unable to sleep as I lie there, grinding my teeth and dreaming of the day when she is made to parade naked through the streets in every town in Britain while the crowds chant, shame.
And throw lumps of excrement. He is a disgrace. There's nothing funny about him. He also said strikers should all be shot. He's the most disgusting man. I'm ashamed he's British, and I think how dare he. Women are already we're killed by men. Women are scared to walk the streets. And he says something like that.
Narinder, you know what? I think possibly on this one he took it too far.
Do you think?
He did take it too far. But what irritates me is that she's clearly an unpleasant, controlling psychopath. And you just need to by taking it too far, you take it away from the fact that she is very controlling, and that all the stuff that's being said about how Diana would have loved her. Diana would have despised her for taking her sons apart.
Tonya, I am Camillist and all of that.
Well, this is the thing. I think it's very different. Writing hurty words about somebody is not the same as killing somebody that you live with.
He's inciting hatred. This is criminal offence. I'm surprised he hasn't been arrested this morning. This is a criminal offence. It's disgusting. And you say it takes away that she's controlling. Tonya, how do you know her? She's not controlling. She's just a woman. She's actually tried with that royal family. She's tried a law. And they have been disgusting to her.
Did she not want to sit in Watford on a wet Wednesday shaking hands? She just wanted the glamour. They have been fantastic. She knew what she was marrying into. But the point is here, Jeremy took it too far.
Exactly.
He's a very funny guy. But also, satirical writing, this type of writing, is not a criminal offence. That is what I have a problem with.
It's not acceptable.
Because, well, then you're going to cut off all types of free speech, and we're not going to be able to speak anymore.
This free speech was a bit too far. He might as well have said the N-word or the P-word.
No,
this is
no, it's totally different.
It's not totally.
I think, the reaction, lots of women have come out and said he went too far. Jackie Smith, former MP, says, because he said it was a generational as well. He said, anybody my age can't stand Meghan Markle. Jackie Smith said, I'm your age, I couldn't disagree with you more. Why do you have to be so horrible? I can't believe it's good for you, and it certainly isn't good for the rest of us. I didn't see it necessarily as misogyny.
It was misogyny, it was hateful, it was racist, it was disgusting. No. Honestly, he's cancelled.
But she is funny. But you see, this is the thing. For me with the documentary, have you seen all 6 episodes now?
Yes.
Have you seen all 6
Not
episodes?
all 6.
First 3, she won me over. They won me over. I thought there are 2 sides to this story. They have just wanted to express themselves. Second 3, they lost me completely.
Why?
Because I felt like on the second 3, the self-pity that it descended into, and it was so hard to feel sorry for them in this beautiful multi-million-pound mansion. They're clearly motivated by money. They're motivated by celebrity.
They need to make a living. They're not sponging off taxpayers.
It's not making a living.
They are making a living. They are making a living. If they're going to tell us which needed to be told, they were bullied. There was racism from the press. The royal family were disgusting to them. William was awful. Kate was jealous of Meghan.
Oh, this is women hatred. What you have just said is misogyny. Kate was not jealous of her.
She was jealous.
But Kate is an honourable woman. She has stoically taken on what she's married into. Meghan has arrived, and she wants it all her way. She wants to go to the glitz, the glamour, the Oscars and all of that, but she doesn't want to do any of the part of duty. And if you're part of the royal your family.
Middleton,
It's duty.
Kate Middleton is boring.
So you're being a misogynist now, and I'm very disappointed
boring.
in you.
Right, ladies, good start. Let's move on. I knew you'd be
Merry
good value,
Christmas.
you two, right?
Merry Christmas and goodwill.
This is what we call preparing you for your Christmas dinner table, ladies and gentlemen. When these topics come up on Christmas Day, you'll have an opinion. Hopefully you won't be throwing sprouts at each other. Right, Britain could welcome 1 million migrants a year to help fill jobs. This is the Social Market Foundation. They've released a report saying that we need to have more immigration, Tonya, better controlled, and jobs in the right places. Do you agree with them?
Well, the thing is I'm an immigrant's child. So my parents came over and they were economic immigrants. They were very poor in Cyprus and they came over here and they have worked like you can't believe. My dad has paid, it must be going into millions of taxes into the kind of treasury pocket. The problem is there's this kind of fudge of people that are being brought over to work and pay taxes and, you know, add to the economy, to these guys that are turning up on boats. A lot of them are criminals. We don't know what they do. We don't know anything about them. You know, we've heard all of these horrible cases of where there's been things that have happened with these people and we can't chase them, like rapes and burglaries and drugs.
I think that's really far-fetched.
No, it's not, though. It's not far-fetched.
That's such a generalisation.
We don't know where they come from. We don't know. Whereas if we can get more immigrants, because the Brits don't want to work. How many people do we have unemployed?
2 million. We've got 2 million people
unemployed.
jobs.
They don't want to do a lot of the jobs that we need them for. So we do need working migrants to come over, but it has to be structured and we have to know who they are.
Hasn't what Tonya's just done then, what so many of us do actually, which is to blend together migration, legal migration and illegal economic migrants and or refugees coming over the channel. Unfortunately, I feel like in this country we don't really know where we stand anymore, and I don't think a lot of people know what we want. I bet you know what you want.
Well, you know, in America, when they do have the illegals, if you want to call them, they're still allowed to work. The problem is they're not allowed to work. Let them get a job. Even if they're non-documented, like in America, let them find work. Let them work. You know, migration is such a positive impact on our economy, on the overall population. And these Albanians that everyone keeps saying are criminals, we don't know. The Ukrainians could be criminals. The people from Hong Kong could be criminals. People from India could be criminals. It's just a generalisation. It's such a myth. But Albanian men are young men. We need that kind of labour. They're young, working men.
I agree.
We need it.
I agree. My daughter's best friend is an Albanian girl and they are the loveliest Albanian family you can make. And they're the ones that are telling me, they tell me that a lot of these guys that come over are criminals. They've got criminal records over in
would be.
Otherwise, why don't they take the flight, the 35 quid flight, and come over properly? There is a reason that they're paying 5,000 to come over on a boat.
But there's many in desperate need as well. The danger is there is a few from Albania.
They're poor, but they're not at risk.
Well, they've been exploited by criminals. These are people traffickers. They're scared of what's going to happen to their family back in Albania. I think, you know, when you merge it all and just make sweeping generalisations, it's dangerous that we're not helping the people that really do need the help.
But you know as well as I do that if you are in a desperate situation, and if our family was in a desperate situation, my husband would not leave us to get on a boat.
Of course he would.
Leave us.
No,
he wouldn't.
My husband
would take us with him.
No,
that's
a danger. Tonya,
Your husband would row the boat. Your husband would actually row the boat. We're going to hear about this Rwanda policy this morning, about any minute now, actually, probably just after the break. I'm going to be talking to Mark White, because we're supposed to hear whether the High Court will allow or disallow this Rwanda policy. Do we want the Rwanda policy?
No, because it's not going to work anyway. It's absolute myth. It's a bit like Santa Claus. Does he exist or doesn't he? The Rwanda policy is exactly the same thing. It's a myth. I don't believe it's not going to happen.
We need to do something, but I just don't think this is the right thing to do. It just seems like a really stupid thing to take someone halfway across the world. I mean, why don't we have a holding boat in the channel? That would make sense. And also then it means that they're not going so far away.
We need more caseworkers. We need more experienced caseworkers, and we need to process them. It's all about the processing.
Yeah.
But we do need the labour. We need the workers.
But we don't
let them work.
We don't need them in Britain. I think one of these big cruise ships now that's being kind of put to pasture that can take thousands of people, that's where it needs to be processed. And then either go back or they come forward, one or the other. OK, well, we will let you know when we hear from Mark White about that court ruling. Narinder, Tonya, thank you.
round one. After the break, we'll be talking about the BBC. They're releasing their second series of podcasts, and this time about the former ISIS bride Shamima Begum. The series seeks to separate fact from fiction. It's interviews with Shamima Begum to answer all the questions. What did she do? How did she get there? What happened when she arrived? Is this a good idea? That's after your morning's news.
Good afternoon, it's 10:33. Good morning, I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. A mother slammed the health secretary on the eve of nurses' strikes. The Royal College of Nursing has threatened further industrial action in the new year if ministers don't respond to their demands within 48 hours of tomorrow's walkout. Steve Barclay, the health secretary, says he's open to talks ahead of strike action this week, but suggested the government would not budge on pay. He's put the onus on unions to ensure they supply sufficient emergency cover so patients get the care they need. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, Jonathan Ashworth, told us the ministers need to start negotiating.
We would actually have a serious conversation with our NHS staff. We've not got that at the moment. You've said that Steve Barclay is saying he's prepared to talk. Well, let's see if we actually see that. But as I say, it feels to me they've gone into lockdown while the country grounds to a halt. That's not good enough.
High Court judges will rule today whether the government's policy to send illegal immigrants to Rwanda is lawful. The government's been criticised for the plan to send asylum seekers to the country, with charities claiming the East African nation lacks a fair and efficient asylum system. 2 judges at the Royal Courts of Justice will give their ruling on the legal challenge this morning. We'll keep you up to date here. More than 130 bus companies are going to cap single fares to help passengers amid the cost of living crisis. National Express and Stagecoach are among companies which will introduce the £2 upper limit for fares in England outside of London from next year. The aim is to help people who are travelling for work, education and medical appointments. The scheme's being backed with £60 million worth of government funding. Elon Musk has asked the public what they think of his leadership of the social media platform Twitter. Well, he launched a poll yesterday asking users whether or not he should step down as the chief executive. 57% of 14 million voters said yes. He's faced criticism since taking over the platform, including his decisions around content moderation. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236 and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It is 10:38. You are watching and listening to GB News. Thank you for joining me. Now, here's a story that caught my eye over the weekend, and I thought we should probably have a chat about it. A Shamima Begum podcast is returning to BBC Sounds next year. The Shamima Begum story aims to separate fact from fiction as it explores who is Shamima Begum. Investigative journalist Josh Baker has been talking to her. She's given him what he says is her full account of what really happened after she disappeared as a teenager from London. And he says there are different ways to tell the Shamima Begum story. As Shamima challenges the removal of her British citizenship by the UK government, I've examined her accounts to give listeners a definitive narrative on this complex, nuanced and shocking story. I'm joined by Rebecca Ryan now. Rebecca is campaign director of Defund the BBC. Rebecca, good morning. Episode 1 of, and the title is very telling, isn't it? I Am Not a Monster. The Shamima Begum story. This will be available from January. What's your reaction when you heard this news?
I think it's just the BBC's become a parody of itself, you know, broadcasting the opinions and views of someone like Shamima, who polls have shown over and over again that between 79 and 85% of Britons do not want Shamima to have her British citizenship given back. You know, people strongly believe that this woman was a member of the terrorist organisation. You know, all the international intelligence shows that. We don't want licence fee payers' money being spent on hearing her side of the story. You know, it's just unacceptable for British people to be forced into paying for the BBC when they are putting out this kind of content. You know, the BBC is supposed to represent the views of the whole of the UK. Now, the whole of the UK, you know, like I said, around 80% in polls consistently show people do not want Shamima to be given back her citizenship, and they don't want to hear her side of the story.
I'm quite torn in a way, Rebecca, because I think as a journalist, as a mother of teenage daughters, I'm very interested to know how a girl born and bred in London was able to be radicalised. And I'm also quite keen to make up my own mind by hearing it from her as opposed to reading headlines. But then I also think, how must the families of victims of ISIS terrorist attacks feel when they see that she has a voice and they do not? Which side of that particular debate should the BBC sit on?
Well, I think that the BBC should sit on the side of listening to the overall views of the UK, and that those show clearly that, you know, people, we're not a nation of terrorist sympathisers. Now, she was radicalised as a teenage girl, but she went over there and she was a willing participant. You know, as I said, international intelligence shows that she was sewing on suicide vests as an adult woman. You know, she was a willing participant and a willing accomplice along with her husband in this sort of battle for the war that ISIS was trying to win over there. So I just really think that it's not right for licence fee payers' money to be spent on hearing her side of the story. And absolutely, we've been hearing overnight from a lot of the people who support us, which are absolutely appalled, where they are being forced to pay a licence and that the money is being spent on this kind of narrative from her side.
Yeah. For people who are listening on the radio, the branding for this podcast is quite interesting. It's a kind of very kind of modern Instagram-ish but pop art take, and it's got her eyes looking very pretty, lots of mascara and shaped eyebrows. It's a very flattering image of her eyes, and to have the headline as "I am not a monster," you can't help but conclude, can you, Rebecca, that it's a PR job for her. And when you see it in those terms, it really does make you wonder what on earth the BBC are doing, acting as the PR agent for Shamima Begum. Do you think this will, ironically, this kind of helps you in your quest to defund the BBC? As much as you don't want to see this will put people on your side.
Absolutely. As I said, this is the BBC becoming a parody of itself, and we see this all the time. You know, this is the kind of thing that would be written into a comedy sketch. The BBC is actually, you know, as you say, running a PR campaign for somebody who essentially, you know, is a terrorist. You know, the international intelligence shows that, you know, she was actively involved in this. And I think it's actually quite misogynistic from the BBC. And as you say there, it's all sort of very flattering and feminine looking poster there. And it's all sort of about she was an innocent victim in this. And, you know, she was an active player. And, you know, if this was a male who had done this, would we be seeing the same thing? So we have to look at it in that way. And I think absolutely she should be treated as a terrorist. And we don't like to hear from terrorists, and we don't want licence fee payers' money being spent on hearing the point of view of terrorists. So yeah, absolutely, it's good for defund the BBC because more and more people are switching off, and this kind of activity means that people are turning in their droves, just realising, you know, that they don't actually have to pay for a licence fee as long as they're not watching any live TV or BBC on demand. So,
well, this is what I was going to ask you. If people don't want to pay their BBC licence fee now, and if you just say, no, I'm not going to do this, what happens, Rebecca? What can you and can't you watch? And how difficult does it make your viewing experience, given that so many TV systems will use apps to log in as well?
Well, so as long as you're not watching any live broadcast TV or BBC iPlayer, you don't need a TV license. So you don't need a TV license just to own a big TV, because TVs are smart. You know, nowadays they're connecting to you online. You can play your Xbox and all of those sort of things. So ever since they had a license fee to cover the BBC iPlayer, it wasn't connected to the TV anymore. It's about whether or not you're watching live broadcast TV. So as long as you're watching only on-demand or catch-up content, i.e. you're choosing what to watch, when to watch it, it's not being broadcast to you, and obviously as well as BBC iPlayer, then you don't have to pay for a TV licence. And more people are clocking onto this. And we've seen this over the last few years because of the lockdown, a huge uptake with the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of these types of content where people were just sort of bored and looking for other things that they could watch. And people are realising, I don't need to pay for a TV licence. And this kind of story that we're seeing from yesterday and today with Shamima, it completely feeds into that. People are like, I don't want to pay for that. Yeah. And then they go and do their research and they see that they don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, OK. Well, thank you so much. Rebecca Ryan there, Campaign Director of Defund the BBC, with the news on the Shamima Begum podcast, which will be available in January, if that's the kind of thing you want to listen to. Now, some breaking news. In the last few minutes, the High Court has ruled the British government's policy of removing asylum seekers to Rwanda is lawful. It is also consistent with the Refugee Convention. We're joined by Home and Security Editor Mark White. Did I just give away your punchline then, Mark White?
No, there's lots to talk about.
Sorry about that, if I did. I'm desperate. That was news to me as I was reading it out loud. What's happened?
Yeah, it's a very important moment, clearly, for the government in terms of that Rwanda policy, which has now been deemed to be lawful. We just heard that ruling handed down by the High Court, and Lord Justice Lewis said, we have concluded that it is lawful for the government to make arrangements for claims to be heard in Rwanda and for claimants to be relocated there. He said, however, the Home Secretary must consider properly the circumstances of each case. Lord Justice Lewis said the Home Secretary has not properly considered the cases of 8 individuals, so the decisions in those 8 cases will be set aside for her to consider afresh.
So effectively what we had was clearly a challenge in the courts, and it involved 8 of those individuals there. The court has ruled that in those specific cases, they need to be reconsidered. Are those the right people, in other words, to have been trying to send to Rwanda?
Right.
But in terms of the general policy that the government has of trying to relocate those that they deem to be suitable to Rwanda, where it's a one-way ticket, remember, even if in the fullness of time you are deemed to be accepted and granted refugee status, you won't come back to the UK, you will make your new life in Rwanda. The judges are clear. That policy is lawful and in tune with the Refugee Convention. So clearly, very significant for the government. What will be interesting now is we absolutely expect there will, as we always see with our legal process, which can be so drawn out, protracted, frustratingly so, we are going to get an appeal. But will this government now move quickly to get people on a plane and get them to Rwanda to start this process moving? Because remember, that first plane was going to go, there was only less than 100 or so who were on the plane initially. And by the time it was due to go, it was down to, I think, about 8 that were going to go anyway. And then, of course, 8 got scuppered by the ruling from the ECHR, which asked the UK government to reconsider it again in the UK courts to do that.
Yeah.
So will they now, in the interim, before this appeal is formally launched, get people on a plane, get them to Rwanda, get the process underway? Of course, getting the process started is a far cry from actually the full process working in terms of it being a deterrent, because sending a few hundred people is not a deterrent. 45,000 people have come across in the last year. You will have to really send many thousands of people to Rwanda as part of an ongoing policy for it really to be seen as any kind of deterrent.
OK, fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Now, Christmas is less than a week away, don't remind me. And there's a project in Blackpool. I think it's fantastic. It's a competition involving children being tasked with performing an act of kindness in their community. Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, joined a few of their officers to surprise the winner at their school. This is what happened.
It's a festive fun day here at this primary school in Blackpool. But for one pupil, his Christmas wish is about to come true.
He doesn't know it yet, but 6-year-old Oliver has won an act of kindness competition organised by Blackpool Police this Christmas. The prize? He'll get to fulfil his dream of becoming a police officer. Well, for a day anyway.
The winner is Oliver Shorthouse. Oliver, brilliant! Oh, mate, congratulations, buddy. Thank you so much for your act of kindness.
Tell me, Oliver, what did you do to win this competition?
We collected food, and then every night we saw what we got, and then we kept putting it out every day till Friday.
And then what did you do with the food that you'd collected?
Gave it to the food bank.
Why do you think it's important to be kind?
Because if someone doesn't have any money, you can give them some, so you're being kind.
And how does it make people feel when you're kind?
Happy.
Learning to be kind is always a great lesson, especially over the festive season. And so, who better to judge this competition than Father Christmas himself?
Yo ho ho! I have a very special competition to announce. Blackpool Police are asking all children of primary school age to take part in an act of kindness.
Of course, he did have some help from his elves at the Blackpool Police Grotto.
Christmas being the season of kindness, we wanted to really highlight the fact that this Christmas is probably going to be a bit more difficult for a lot of people all over the country. And one of the small things that we wanted to do was to encourage children from around Blackpool to engage with like an act of kindness in their community.
Although there could only be one winner, I'm sure the children of Blackpool will all be on Santa's good list this year. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Thank you, Sophie. Right, I'm back here with my guests this morning. Broadcaster Narinder Kaur and broadcaster and author Tonya Buxton are with me. Right, this story is about tax. None of us like to pay any tax, do we? However, I think if I was an absolutely loaded billionaire, I probably wouldn't mind paying that much tax. Wealth tax, as you call for a wealth tax, UK billionaire numbers are up by 20% since the pandemic. The number of UK billionaires has increased by a fifth since the onset of the COVID pandemic, according to a report, and not all of them were friends of MPs. According to a report calling for a progressive wealth tax to tackle rising inequality. What do you think, Tonya?
I think that if you've made money over this crisis of lockdown that we have, that you should be paying for it. It's disgusting. The median billionaire is now 2 billion. It's not 1 billion, it's 2 billion.
In the UK, this is?
This is in the UK. So these people have made obscene amounts of money off the back of
misery.
Everybody else's misery and suffering. And so, yes, I think they should be taxed. I don't believe in taxes normally, but I think they should be taxed to the hill.
I think it's very easy to say they should be, but the problem is the tax loopholes. It's too easy to get away with not paying tax. I know far too many people who just find ways of not paying tax.
Offshore.
Oh, you don't need to pay. You don't need to pay this. And I'm thinking, we pay our tax. Me and my husband pay our tax. And I tell you what makes me mad about people making money from this lockdown is the fraudulent claims, these bounce back loans. I know a family that knows a family that took 6 bounce-back loans, liquidated the company, boom, 300 grand in their pocket, new house, new this. And we're suffering, I know. I'm mad.
Literally makes me get...
And they've got away with it.
What makes me angry is that they're not doing anything about it. They handed them out. It's the incompetence. The whole thing about what's happened to this country in the past 2-3 years is the complete and utter incompetence of these men that are supposed to be running the country. They are not fit for purpose. They should not be there anymore.
You sound like Gary Neville.
I do?
We should talk about Gary Neville. I think Gary Neville's got a point with what he's saying.
No, he doesn't.
He's got a point with what he's saying. Because what he said, he's not saying we're going to compare nurses exactly to the same conditions of what immigrants in Qatar are facing. He's saying, like for like, we've got nurses in the sixth richest economy going to food banks.
Do you know why he did it, Narinder? Because he wants to be a politician and make his career better.
But really, this is the same story in a way. He's sat there in Qatar. He's surrounded by billionaires. There's probably more billionaires in Qatar than there are here. He himself is an extremely wealthy man, and he's taken the opportunity to say, in order to help our emergency services, our nurses, we need more tax to pay. I think he was all right to say that in that situation, was he?
No.
He was comparing the strikers here to workers there who died. Yes, but there's people dying waiting for ambulances here. He's got a point. There's people dying not getting the NHS service. He's got a point.
It's the
He's using his platform. He's using his platform.
Let me just say, it is complete hypocrisy. And if he had not been getting all the money and all the millions to go out there, maybe he would have had...
But at least he's using that money.
It's
he's
hypocrisy.
Using it and using his voice.
He's using it to stick it in his pocket and buy a better house and make himself into a politician,
and make a point at the same point. And making a point while he does it.
No, hypocrisy is what's the problem in this country.
Right, we're out of time. We're out of time. That's the end of our first hour. We're going to be right back with more after a short break. No more coffee, ladies. No more coffee. See you in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It is exactly 11 o'clock. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for finding us. Before midday, we're going to have more on the breaking news that we brought you just a short time ago about the High Court finding in favour of the government over its Rwanda migrant policy. We'll also get to the bottom of the battle between Tory MP Lee Anderson and ex-footballer and now commentator Gary Neville. They had a bit of a Twitter spat yesterday. During ITV's coverage of the World Cup, Neville took the opportunity to have a go at the government. And Harry and Meghan want an apology for the way that they've been treated by the royal family. Yes, I can't say that with a straight face. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news with Rosie.
A very good morning to you. It's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. High Court judges have ruled that the government's Rwanda policy is legal. Giving their judgment from the Royal Courts of Justice, they found the policy was consistent with International Refugee Convention. The government's been criticised for the plan to send asylum seekers to the country, with charities claiming the East African nation lacks a fair and efficient asylum system. The skipper of the fishing boat, which helped rescue dozens of migrants from the Channel last week, has criticised the UK immigration policy for making the tragedy, he said, inevitable. In his first interview since the incident, Raymond Strachan told GB News British authorities have been acting as a migrant taxi service, encouraging ever-increasing numbers of people to make the journey.
And you get the UK government saying they're getting send patrol boats out to stop the crossings. Well, I see the patrol boats there, but I just see them like a taxi service. That's what it is.
The mother of a 3-year-old girl has criticised the Health Secretary today on the eve of another nationwide nurses' strike. The Nurses' Union has threatened further industrial action in the new year if ministers don't respond to their demands within 48 hours of tomorrow's walkout. Steve Barclay says he's open to talks with Unite ahead of strike action, but suggested the government won't budge on pay. Their mother told Mr Barclay at a hospital in South London this morning it's unfair to blame the COVID pandemic on resourcing issues.
The level of care they provide is amazing, but they're not being able to provide it in the way they want to provide it because the resourcing is not there. You know, like I said, on Monday we reduced the in, and the number of people coming through the door is too many, and it's not fair to blame it on the pandemic anymore, is it? Because actually, we had problems in the NHS before we went into the pandemic. We were short of doctors, we were short of beds going into the pandemic. So I think it's really wrong to blame it on the pandemic, and actually the damage that you're doing to families like myself is terrible.
Well, the Health Secretary says he's keen to work with the unions to address the range of concerns that matter to staff, but says they must provide sufficient emergency cover to protect patients.
We need to focus on patients and addressing the backlogs that we have, particularly the waiting list for operations as a result of the pandemic. And that's why it's important that we work together, and I'm very keen to continue those talks with the RCN and other trade unions so we can mitigate any impact on patient safety.
The Prime Minister's called on Northern European allies to stand firm in their support of Ukraine. Rishi Sunak touched down in Latvia this morning and has told fellow leaders it's an incredibly important time for the Defence Alliance to come together. Mr Sunak will travel to Estonia later today to meet with British troops. It comes as the UK announced £250 million of fresh ammunition as part of its defensive aid package for 2023. More than 130 bus companies will cap single fares to help passengers amid the cost of living crisis. National Express and Stagecoach are among companies which will introduce the £2 upper limit for fares in England outside of London from next year. It's to help people who are travelling for work, education and medical appointments. The scheme's being backed with £60 million worth of government funding. 20 million cars are estimated to hit the motorway this week as people travel to see family over Christmas. The RAC says traffic will be especially bad this Friday and Saturday, made worse by the ongoing wave of strikes across rail services. Thousands of RMT members will walk out from 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve until the 27th of December. The RAC predicts almost 8 million journeys will be made over the 2 days before Christmas Day. Elon Musk has asked the public what they think of his leadership of the social media platform Twitter. Launching a poll yesterday, he asked users whether or not he should step down as the chief executive. 57% of 14 million voters said yes. He's faced criticism since taking over Twitter, including his decisions around content moderation. You're up to date on GB News, and I'll bring you more as it develops. Now, back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome back to Bev Turner today on GB News. Thank you for joining me. So in the last 20 minutes, the High Court has ruled that the British government's policy of removing asylum seekers to Rwanda is lawful. So what does this mean next? Could we see departing flights soon? Well, for more of this, we're going to be joined by our Home and Security editor, Mark White, in just a moment. Lionel Messi got his hands on the World Cup last night with Argentina beating France in what's being called one of the best finals in the tournament's history. But legendary Mancunian football pundit Gary Neville laid into Tory party in his post-match analysis. Conservative MP Lee Anderson called him out. Neville hit back. Lee will be with us in just a moment to explain what happened. And of course, this show is nothing without you and your views. Today on Twitter, we have a poll asking you, was Gary Neville right to comment on UK politics during the World Cup coverage? Nearly 4,000 of you have voted so far, with 90% of you saying that he had no right to speak out. Gary Neville has actually just tweeted me during the show, so you're going to have to stick around to see what he said. But email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, to have your say. So So the High Court has ruled that the government's Rwanda deportation scheme is lawful in the last hour. This comes as the skipper of the fishing boat, which helped rescue dozens of migrants from the English Channel last week, has angrily hit out at UK immigration policy for making the tragedy inevitable, in their words. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has also obtained more exclusive images of Wednesday's rescue operation. I'm happy to say that he joins me now. Good morning, Mark. Just remind me the timescale a little bit of this Rwanda suggestion, because when it first came around, it sounded like a sort of satirical joke, didn't it? That I think it was Priti Patel at the time was Home Secretary, sat around and thought, what's going to sound like the most unappealing place we could send them? We'll send them to Rwanda. And then it got stuck at the starting blocks.
Yes, it was in April, actually, that Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Priti Patel announced the Rwanda deal. And many people did have that initial reaction, as you say, Bev, but then a lot of people took a look at Rwanda and realised that actually, you know, it's a very fast-growing economy in Africa. They already have a track record of accepting refugees and, you know, helping boost their workforce and job opportunities in that country. Now, it went through a number of UK court challenges and was deemed to be lawful. Then, of course, it went to the European Court for Human Rights, who asked the UK courts to take another look at it again. That's what's happened here with this judicial review at the High Court. The High Court has now come back with a ruling to say that, yes, it is a lawful policy and that it is also lawful to send people there for processing while their claims are being established. It is, according to the High Court, in conjunction with within the parameters of the refugee charter, the United Nations refugee laws as well. So it will be interesting to see now what the UK government does in terms of getting people on that flight out to Rwanda, because we are expecting that this will be appealed by those who brought the original challenge. Now, I should say that the court said that in the cases of 8 individuals, it said that it wasn't lawful in that instance because their cases hadn't been properly established and considered by the Home Secretary before they were put on that plane that didn't go anywhere.
So there's always a technicality, isn't there, in these things?
Yeah, so they've been asked to look at that again. And I don't know, is there some ambiguity in this court decision? There always potentially is, which might give the human rights lawyers some scope for appealing lots of these cases when people are put on these flights to Rwanda. But we'll have to see how it works in practice, and we can expect that there will be appeals. Now, the British government is clear that the Rwanda policy alone is not the silver bullet. It is part of a raft of measures that they hope will be a deterrent to those trying to cross the channel. But we've been speaking, as you said in your introduction there, to the skipper involved in that dramatic rescue last Wednesday of dozens of migrants who were thrown into the water when their boat deflated. And he's blaming UK immigration policy for effectively acting as a taxi service for people when they get into UK waters, which he says is acting as a lure. This is what he told us in his first full interview. Out in the pitch black of the English Channel, the sound of panicked cries for help. The 6-man crew of the scallop boat Arcturus rush to help as they come alongside the stricken migrant boat. These images are deeply disturbing, but they highlight the very real dangers for these flimsy vessels and the quick thinking and bravery of local fishermen turned rescuers.
If we wasn't there, probably 45 people dead without any trace. Nobody was knowing they was there. I looked over the side, there was about 5 or 6 migrants hanging off the side of the boat.
For Raymond's crew, it was their training and instinct to help that kicked in.
It's not an easy task to try to pull a panicking person out of the water when they're fully clothed, soaking wet. When the other migrants in the dinghy seen they was getting rescued, they started swimming towards the boat.
There was, Raymond says, huge relief when the lifeboats and Coast Guard helicopters reached the scene.
It doesn't matter your political views in the migrant crisis. When you see people in the water screaming, shouting, begging for their life, if you've any compassion at all, the human nature thing to do is rescue people. And that's what we did.
On board the Arcturus, although these survivors were rescued, they were clearly hypothermic. The Scallop boat's crew got them out of their wet clothes and into warm showers before giving them their dry clothes and some hot food. Outside, the fast rescue boat from the Royal Navy's offshore patrol vessel HMS Severn joined in the search for other survivors. As on board the fishing boat, medics checked over those rescued. Raymond Strachan said the events of Wednesday morning were inevitable. Like all local fishing crews, they regularly see migrant boats and often have to help. Like here in January, when the Arcturus had to stand by alongside two inflatables near Dungeness while they waited for UK authorities to arrive on scene. And that same month, this astonishing sight of 5 young men crammed in a tiny inflatable rowing across the channel without an onboard motor and not a single life jacket among them.
I've seen 5 successful crossings last Sunday. Then you get the UK government saying they're getting patrol boats out to stop the crossings. Well, I see the patrol boats there, but I just see them like a taxi service. That's what it is.
Although Wednesday saw tragedy in the Channel, Raymond says it won't act as a deterrent to these crossings. He and his crew expect to see many more migrant boats out here in the months ahead. Mark White, GB News.
Thank you, Mark. And if you want to see the full transcript of what Captain Raymond Strachan said to Mark, that is on the GB News website. Now, Gary Neville has been a dividing opinion over the last, it's not even 24 hours now. Some are calling him a virtue signaller and some are saying he had a right to make political statements while he had a big stage. It was during the World Cup final post-match analysis. ITV, of course, he was working for, and he had a bit of a rant about the working conditions in Qatar amid controversy of FIFA's decision to hold it there, and he compared this to the UK. Have a listen.
And it is just worth mentioning that we've got a current government in our country who are demonising rail workers, ambulance workers and terrifyingly nurses. So in our country, we've got to look at workers' rights.
So, I mean, joining me now is Conservative MP Lee Anderson, who spoke out against Gary Neville on Twitter. Good morning, Lee. So,
morning, Bev.
Morning. So Gary makes this statement. You go onto Twitter and you basically say what?
Well, I'm just calling that as hypocrisy. That's all I'm doing, Bev. Look, this is a man who's gone over there. In my opinion, he's took blood money by going to Qatar. He's banging on all the time about workers' rights, about conditions with our public services, who, by the way, I think their conditions and pay are a lot better than these poor migrants in Qatar.
Yeah, sorry, sorry, Lee. I'm desperate to hear what you've got to say. I just want to show viewers the text. Sorry, the tweet. Okay. So you tweeted and you said this. That's Gary Neville's tweet. Hang on a minute. You said this. Hold the line, caller. Your call is important to me. We will find it. We haven't got it, don't worry. So you made your tweet. You basically called him out, Lee. OK, and then Gary Neville said this. Let's show this tweet now, please.
OK.
So Gary Neville says, I'm glad that you're, let's say, hacked off, the biggest set of charlatans to ever be in power. What when you saw that?
Well, I just sort of smiled. I'm new to Twitter, Bev, so I didn't know how to tag him in or do anything like that. I've just learned how to tag people and retweet. Look, I mean, I'm pretty sure, Bev, that when he was a professional footballer earning hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds a year, playing for Manchester United and England. I'm pretty sure he never called out the low pay of staff at football grounds around the country, especially Old Trafford, where I believe at one time they were paying people minimum wage or living wage, people living on the breadline, escorting them into the grounds, doing all the jobs they do at football grounds. Not once has this virtue signalling ex-footballer called it out. Never heard him at all. Now, he, like I say, he bangs on about workers' rights. He goes to Qatar, where they've probably got some of the worst rights in the world, takes God knows how much money to do with that, and he has the cheek to come on and slate our government. The man's an absolute hypocrite and he's a moron.
But listen, Lee Anderson, you are a man of values, right? You are a man of opinion. That's what's driven you to become a politician. Gary Neville perhaps has that same sort of ambition in sight. And don't you like it when you see a man not just bread and circuses, not just talking about 22 people kicking a ball of air, but he comes out and he says something meaningful?
No, he's talking rubbish because he's making the comparison, Bev, between the cruelty and the harsh reality of migrant labourers in Qatar. But which, by the way, some have actually died in those stadiums he's been making thousands of pounds preaching his nonsense from. He has the cheek and audacity to compare that with our public service workers. I think probably Gary, in his footballing career, has headed too many balls.
You though, Lee, you've been a very public proponent for free speech. I love that about you. You just say, as long as you're not going to incite any sort of hate or violence, then you should be allowed to say what you've got to say. How do you square that with your reaction to this?
I agree with you about 100%. People should be allowed to say what they actually mean, but there's a time and a place. People tune into ITV, one, because they don't like Lineker on BBC, but they want to watch a football match and listen to football commentary. Now, we don't expect a football pundit to start talking about politics during the World Cup final. He used to button it, and like I said yesterday on Twitter, if he wants to get into politics, come and stand against me in Ashfield. I welcome the challenge.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I went on Twitter and I said that I was going to be talking to you and I did copy in Gary Neville. I'll give you a lesson on that one day, Lee. So I did my Gary Neville and I copied him in so he could see our message and he's responded to us. I said, come on the show, come and have a chat. And this is what he said. I don't know whether we have this tweet or not. There we go. He said, I can't, he means come on the show. I can't, unfortunately, but I hope that he enjoys his last 18 months as an MP. Thumbs up. Go on, Lee, your reaction to that.
Well, there you go. He's once again his maths are wrong, Bev, because it's 2 years. He can't even count up to 2 years. They'll ignore him. He'll carry on virtue signaling, but he'll not put his money where his mouth is. And by the way, he's got a lot of money.
Let me tell you this, though, right? He's a successful man. He's an opinionated northerner, and I know you don't mind those. If he was to come to you and say, can I come and join the Conservative Party, you'd love him, wouldn't you? Isn't it just the fact that he's with the Labour Party that he's saying this that you don't like?
Well, the Conservative Party, Bev, are a broad church, and I think we'd even accept Gary Neville.
You see, you could say a lot of what he was saying, a lot of his point was that, there's corruption and the strikers. A lot of Conservative voters feel like that at the moment. I don't think he was necessarily making a division between the left and the right. You could say he was reflecting the views of a lot of frustrated Conservatives.
I think what he was doing, Bev, if he'd got any sort of principles whatsoever, he could have made this statement at the beginning of the World Cup, not wait until right at the very end when he's about to get on a plane and his paycheck's just been cashed into his bank. Like I say, I think the man's a bit of an hypocrite, but I'm always willing to come on here and have a debate with him.
Absolutely. We will try and make that happen. Lee Anderson, Conservative MP, thank you so much for your time this morning and talking to us in the spirit. I like the debate. I like the politics, don't you? Well, we've got a Twitter poll running about this, and when I last looked, I haven't looked now, but it was about 90% of you think he had no right to say that, so I might be in the minority. But anyway, email me gbviews@gbnews.uk, tell me what you think. There is our Twitter poll. The percentage of you, I can't see it because the graphic's in the way, but over 80% of you now think that he was not right to make those comments during the World Cup coverage. Right, I'm going to be back with my panel in just a moment to discuss the top stories of the day. We've got lots to go through. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons. I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good morning, welcome back to Bev Turner. Today it's 11:24. This is GB News on TV, radio and online. OK, my guests are back here this morning, joined by broadcaster Narinder Kaur and also broadcaster Tonya Buxton. Now, yep, that's Tonya, that's Narinder. They got there in the end. Right, Heathrow customers are furious this morning. They're waiting hours for luggage. Right, this is partly a video that you took yesterday, right,
It is,
Tonya?
because it blew my mind. So I arrived in Heathrow yesterday, and all around where the luggage carousels are piles and piles of suitcases that no one's looking after. If I had decided that I wanted to spend the next hour opening these cases up, stealing what I wanted, or even taking the cases away with me, there was no one there to stop me. And my point is, we are paying airport taxes, we are paying for flights, we're paying all of this, and there was absolutely no care for your luggage at all.
Whose fault is that then? Like, where is the blame here?
It's not the passengers.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. One frustrated passenger tweeted, at Heathrow Airport is in absolute shambles. No ground staff available to dock the plane, so passengers are sitting for hours on the plane after landing. No baggage handlers either. Hundreds of people waiting for their suitcases for hours. What on earth is going on?
Well, staff shortages because we don't have the workers. It comes back to that. We don't have the workers.
It feels like every shop I walk into, every service I try to access, there is nobody available to work. Where have they all gone?
Brexit.
Oh, God.
Oh, Tonya.
Please, I'm banging my head.
Tonya, we need the workers.
I was just in Greece,
Tonya,
okay?
we need the workers.
I was just in Greece, and then I've been in France, and I've been in Italy, and funnily enough, none of them have workers either, and they didn't have Brexit. So what do you think it is?
How is this Brexit? Because they've never had the workers, Tonya.
Is it the lockdown?
One at a time. One at a time.
Tonya, they've never had the workers. Greece, anywhere, they've never had that.
Yes,
We've never had this problem, and it is because of Brexit. We don't have the workers, and we need the workers.
It's because of
British
lockdown.
people don't want to work. End of. They're lazy.
Isn't it? Well, there is a case that I think there are. Well, what do we say? That figure that we keep coming back to, I think it's one of the most shocking things about 2 million people who are of working age who just don't bother going to work.
Well, they've all got long COVID. There's a lot of this long COVID going on. I mean, come on.
That's what I'm saying. It's lockdown.
I'm ill. I've still got to work. I still have to go to work.
Why are you wearing a mask?
Yeah.
You know I'm joking. But are you? Well, does this kind of story about luggage and flying and the inconvenience put you off? I would not have entertained the idea of getting on an airplane this Christmas because I know that nothing works.
It kind of breaks my heart because the fact of the matter is that those of us that do work hard, and especially me, immigrant's child, I have to go to other countries to see my family. So, and the fact that they're having these strikes now, to go back to the strikes, the rail strikes, the baggage handler strikes, all these strikes now, it doesn't do anything apart from cut us off at the knees. It stops us living. It stops the common poor man.
It's part of our value of a great British society is the ability to strike for fair pay. We were just talking about how much money people made in lockdown at the expense of people who are suffering. There's people suffering. Nurses are suffering.
Nurses
and people aren't getting paid. They need to strike. We need fair pay. This government, 12 years of a Tory government, and look at the state we're in.
And you think
you can't get a doctor's appointment?
You think the others would be any better? That's the point. Do you really think that the other side would be any better? Honestly, now, be honest. Just be true. Don't be political. Be truthful.
Well, Labour would be better. They'd pay.
Oh, they would
better.
not.
Of course they would.
Never
Labour
did
would be better.
The NHS in the state because of Labour.
Rishi Sunak in Prime Minister Question Times. He never has to answer Rishi Sunak. He stands there and he just says the same old thing, the same old rhyme.
Can we just talk about the fact of the reason that the nurses are striking is because they're not getting enough money, and I agree with that. But the reason that they're not getting enough money is because the NHS is so badly run. 50% of the NHS do not treat patients.
Yeah, they're admin.
It's a corrupt admin.
Right, talking of corruption, the royal family, no, I'm joking. Ngazi Fulani received the apology. Did you see this over the weekend? This obviously all kicked off, it feels like about 3 weeks ago, but I don't think it's a particularly long time ago. What is it, a week or so? It's a long time in news at the moment. So Lady Hussey was at that drinks party. We're all very familiar with this now. And Ngazi Fulani came along and said, where are you from? So the palace, in their wisdom, decided to get the two ladies together and have a public
I thought
apology.
it was a beautiful moment. It was wonderful. It gave me such hope. Look at it. They sat there together. They're talking about it. It's not just she sat there apologising to Ngozi. They're talking about how we can improve race relations in Britain.
Lady Hussey was literally thrown under the bus.
She was not thrown.
Well,
she is an older lady. She is an older lady.
Hang on, one at a time.
No. She's an old lady who's worked 60 years for the palace. Okay?
No excuse.
Ngozi came with almost African dress. What's her real name? She's changed her name.
Marlene Headley.
Thank you. So there's a lot of things that you know, if I was dealing with if you're dealing with an 80-year-old woman who's clearly polite, she made this into something toxic. It
was toxic.
Needed to be
Here's
that.
The thing. Why couldn't she?
Toxic.
So this conversation that they've subsequently had, why couldn't they have had that at the time? Why couldn't Ngazi Fulani have said very calmly to Lady Hussey? Why couldn't she have said, you know what, when you ask me where I'm from, this is really uncomfortable. Can I explain to you why you might have got this wrong?
Yeah.
Have that conversation privately without going onto Twitter and then making this massive kick-off, which it became.
Because I think as a woman of colour, you get a bit frightened, you get a bit shocked. Oh, my God, has that person just actually said that to me? And you don't know how to react in that moment. And yes, she may not have had to go into Twitter, but, I think she brought a lot of attention to it, which needed to be brought.
She brought toxic attention to something which did not need to be.
It's racism
it wasn't racism.
It was
Listen,
racist.
I get called. I'm not a woman of colour, but I'm Greek. So
That's why you don't take offence. But if you are a woman of colour, you take offence.
But you just don't.
And I think
if you want to take offence because you're looking for toxicity, then
think
to cause trouble.
It's nice that they could sit down, that we can sit down and have a conversation. It was nice that they sat down and had that conversation.
I think there was something deeply uncomfortable about...
Did you?
Well, I tell you why I think it was uncomfortable. The knee-jerk reaction from William and the Palace before they knew the story to say, you're gone, there is no place for racism in the royal family, that was awful to do that to an 83-year-old woman. I think that is almost unforgivable. But to then sit back and say, well, how does this reflect on the palace? Oh, we better wheel her in again. Let's get Lady Hussey back in. Let's sit her up for a press. I just feel like they've used her, and I feel like it wasn't respectful to either of them.
She made the mistake, Beverly. She's the one who was rude Okay, let's take out the racism. She was a rude lady. I don't care if she's old.
Why was she
was rude?
She was old.
Where are you from? Where are you really from? No, but where are you really from? She was rude. She's got away with it for too long.
No,
you have to be forgiving of some. You have to also take into account her age and therefore the fact that she may not have been entirely tactful and there may have been a clumsy...
Listen, I know for a fact, so my parents are older. Bear in mind that a lot of language has changed, a lot of things have changed, and they're not...
Then she shouldn't be in that position. Then she shouldn't be in that position.
No, because she's 83 years old.
She shouldn't be in
a little
such a high position.
But we can't put people over 80 behind closed doors and never let them go out.
Then she needed to be trained, and that's why they sat down, and I'm glad they had the conversation. She was wrong.
Well, the palace have said hopefully they can both now quietly go on about their lives and be out of the eye of the storm. Now, after the break, we're going to be sticking with the royals. Harry and Meghan want a royal summit. Oh, they want an apology as well, and an apology as the Sussexes push for the family to make the first peace offering. I'm going to be joined by former royal butler after the news.
Good morning, it's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. High Court judges have ruled the government's Rwanda policy is legal. Giving their judgment from the Royal Courts of Justice, they found the policy was consistent with International Refugee Convention. Early this year, the government announced plans to send asylum seekers who arrive illegally to the UK to Rwanda to claim asylum there. The government's previously faced legal challenges, which means to date, no flights have actually departed. Charities have vowed to appeal today's decision, claiming the East African nation lacks a fair and efficient asylum system. The Nurses' Union says the Health Secretary will have to carry the can if patients suffer as a result of NHS strikes. The Royal College of Nursing has threatened further industrial action in the new year if ministers don't respond to their demands within 48 hours of tomorrow's walkout. Steve Barclay says he's open to talks with Unite ahead of the strike action this week, but suggested the government would not budge on pay. He's put the onus on unions to ensure they supply sufficient emergency cover so patients get the care they need. More than 130 bus companies are going to cap single fares to help passengers amid the cost of living crisis. National Express and Stagecoach are among companies which will introduce the £2 upper limit for fares in England outside of London from next year. The idea is to help people who are travelling for work, education and medical appointments. The scheme's being backed with £60 million worth of government funding. Elon Musk could step down as the chief executive of Twitter. In a poll, he asked the public whether they thought he should stand down. 57% of more than 17 million voters said yes, and Musk said he'd honour the result. He's faced significant criticism since taking over the platform, including his decisions around content moderation. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're up to date on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. It's 11:37. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Now, it's been reported that Harry and Meghan want their own apology now from the royal family. This is after the conversation we were just discussing a minute ago about Lady Susan Hussey apologising to Ngozi Fulani. Well, it seems it's very fashionable now to get an apology, whether you deserve it or not. Well, joining me is former royal butler Grant Harold. Grant, good morning. Thank you for joining me. So what is it that they're asking for now? We've all seen this docu-series. I'm sure you did as well. What do they want, these two?
Good morning, Bev. Thank you for having me on. As you said, it seems everybody kind of jumping on this apology idea. I'm not sure. I don't know where, obviously, this source, where this information has come from. It's a bit confusing because I don't quite know what the apology is supposed to be for. If it's to do with, obviously, things that they said during the interview with Oprah Winfrey, well, there's an investigation that was done by the Palace internally, which I'm sure by now would have been completed, and they'll be aware of what was discovered during that investigation. So it's possible that if there was wrongdoing, that maybe they've already had an apology. But as I said, I don't quite know what the apology would be for. And then, but there's two sides to this. I've always said I understand both sides of this argument, but then are they going to apologise to the royal family for a lot of the distress and upset that's been caused to them as well? You know, this is where it can get really tricky.
It is tricky, and maybe the royal family should ask them for an apology for washing the dirty linen in public, which is, by any definition, what this docu-series has just done. Do you think there's any chance that there'll be a bridge built between the brothers now from this point onwards? I watched that documentary series, and like I just said before, I thought the first three, it was quite, I felt quite sympathetic towards them. I felt maybe they did have a case to answer, maybe that they were slightly thrown under the bus by the royal family in order to promote Kate and William. And then the second three episodes completely disavowed me of that illusion. And I was just left thinking that they are driven by money, driven by celebrity, and completely lack the values to be a working part of the royal family.
Bev, I personally don't see any way back for them now. I think they have closed the door on the royal family. I think they've made it very clear that they want to do things their own way. They're going to do things their own way. As I said, I understand. I do understand, you know, working in the royal household and knowing how it works and what it's like. I can understand they want a different lifestyle. They want to do things differently. I get that. It's just there's ways of going about it and ways of doing it. Isolating your family and distancing yourself and closing those doors, I don't really understand what that's going to do, because at the end of the day, he's still the son of the king. His children are the grandchildren of the king. It's sad, especially at Christmas when it's all about families being together, and if there has been fallout, it's the opportunity to fix those. With this, I just don't see it to be fixed. If anything, it's going to get more damaged with a book coming out.
One of the arguments that Harry and Meghan tried to put across in this programme was this idea that even though from the outside it looked like they had this very luxurious and ostentatious lifestyle, behind closed doors they were living in a small, cottage in the grounds of Kensington Palace, I think it was at that point. And when they went to this loaned mansion from their actor friend Tyler Perry, they looked around and one of them, it was Meghan or Harry, I think it said, he said, you know, we could have this lifestyle. I was amazed they left that in the documentary because it revealed an awful lot about them. What kind of conditions do royals like Harry and Meghan actually live in? Is it a little bit more pared back than we might imagine?
It's perfectly fine. This is what I think is so strange. I saw that when they said about how small the cottage is, and I thought, well, you know, the greatest of respect, at least they've got a roof over their heads. At least they're comfortable. They're not short of money. So you've got to be a little bit careful when you kind of make comments like that, I think. But I mean, Harry's not. You know, I liked Harry. I got on really well with him, and he's not somebody that wants things over the top. He really isn't. He's very humble. He's very down to earth. For those of the viewers that have visited Highgrove and seen the gardens, Highgrove isn't a huge, not some massive stately home. It's a country house. Which was where obviously they lived and they grew up. A lot of their friends' homes are equally kind of standard homes, if I can say that. So yes, there's palaces and castles for the official stuff, but you know, his upbringing has been as normal as possible when you're a member of the royal family.
Absolutely. I think that's part of the problem, though, isn't it? He's so normal. He couldn't buy into the rituals and the bowing, and it's almost like they've kept his feet on the ground at the detriment of his relationship with the rest of his family. Do you see it like that?
Yeah, I think, do you know, as I said, I just don't, I'm still, I suppose, a bit in shock that all this is still happening because, you know, when all this began, I honestly didn't believe it. And then I thought, oh, it's just a fallout. You know, it's just a simple fallout. And the other thing I can't get over, Bev, watching the documentaries, you know, the Sandringham Summit, which was, you know, what goes on behind closed doors. You know, I was quite a good butler. I always think that things going behind closed doors should stay behind closed doors. And those kind of things, like the Sandringham Summit, that was a private conversation. And it seemed a bit unfair that they're discussing it. I mean, if they all want to discuss it, that's fine. But otherwise, you're getting one version of that. And I felt a bit sorry that the late Queen, who's not here to defend herself, and she certainly wouldn't anyway, but, you know, they're talking about what she was doing. She would never want people to know about that meeting.
Well, it's become a they said, we said, he said, she said, awful scenario, all being played out in public. Former royal butler Grant Harold, thank you very much for joining me. Right, my guests are still here. Narinder Kaur and Tony Buxton are here with me. Now, Prince Andrew, talking of royals...
About time we spoke about Prince Andrew. Can we talk about Prince Andrew?
What's this story about,
His armed
Narinder?
protection police are being replaced by private security paid by King Charles. So he couldn't pay for his own son, but now he's paying for his brother. And I think his armed protection police should be taken off him because I love the way this country love bashing Meghan and Harry, but Andrew quietly in the background getting away with it all. Yes, his armed protection should be taken off him.
What do you think, Tanya?
I don't think he's getting away with anything. I think he's one of the most despised men in Britain, Prince Andrew. I think we all agree with that. I don't think there's anybody that's going to stand up and defend him because he is a product of this kind of entitled upbringing. He did just sell his Swiss ski chalet for 90 million, so I don't understand why he has to get his brother to pay for it and not pay for it himself. But I think Prince Charles is doing King Charles, is doing the correct thing by paying for his brother. I think that's the right thing to do. But you know, all of this thing, the whole thing going back to Meghan and coming back to Andrew, Andrew is completely despised. You will find no defence of him anywhere.
We don't see anything in the papers bashing him.
All the time.
No, I think there's...
Do you know what?
That's
Sometimes
not a fair comment.
No, I think...
He also hasn't asked for it in the way that Meghan has. He has gone away himself. He hasn't done a docu-series trying to clear his name. He did that terrible Newsnight interview.
She had to clear her name. She had to clear her
name.
name.
Do you know what makes me really sad? I mean, I kind of up until the Queen, I was quite into the royal family. It ends for me because of her duty. What makes me sad is this latest part of the information that's been released is that what's happening with Meghan and Harry contributed to her ill health. She was a woman
I don't
only
believe
ever
that.
Well, you only believe
That's
what
so,
you only believe. You only believe if it's racist, if it's against Meghan. You can't believe anything else.
100 years
that
old.
Says it all,
Meghan
doesn't
didn't
it?
contribute.
No one's
that,
bad
Tanya.
against Andrew, and the Queen didn't suffer when her grandchild was going through all of this. Oh, please.
Camilla's not helping. She's like the evil stepmother. She actually had tea with Jeremy Clarkson on Friday, and that published piece that he wrote came out on Saturday. Camilla has got a lot to answer for. She ruined Diana's life and she's trying to ruin Meghan's
whether
life.
you would be saying that about her if she wasn't white.
I don't bring racism into everything, Tonya.
Oh my gosh, I think you might.
No, I don't.
I think you might.
I know. Do I don't think I do. I love Diana. She was horrible to Diana.
Oh, everybody loves
She's
Diana.
Now
That's just
being
a get out.
horrible.
That's
She's
a
being
get out of
horrible to
jail.
Meghan. How come every single source that Camilla is with is the people who hate Meghan? No. Camilla is the evil stepmother. And where's King Charles? What kind of father is he?
Well,
why is he not helping this matter?
He is a disappointed father. Like, I would be disappointed. And let me tell you, you love Diana, I love Diana, and she would despise Meghan for separating the brothers.
What we don't know what King Charles, if he's going to take away their titles from these two as well,
I don't
off the
think
back
their
of
titles
this.
should come. I think they want to give their titles away. You know what? This country, with Meghan, they had gold in their hand. She was a woman of colour. We became suddenly to the rest of the world more accessible.
Narinder.
And suddenly they just threw her under the bus.
Everybody loved her.
No,
we did love her. We really did at first. That wedding day was amazing.
Then you only loved her till the minute she said, "Hang on a minute, I don't like that." Then you all just went, "Boom, we hate that."
Yeah, because you want to say it wasn't about her. You want to say this is not about you anymore and your ambition to get your opinions across.
She's a person.
Well, then
She's
she should have said to Harry, "I need a different life." Did you know what the worst thing she ever did was to give up acting? Once she gave up her career,
up acting, darling.
Nicely put. But to give up her career, to give up her profession, to give up her own, she's got this idea that, I'm an independent feminist and I want to stand up for women. Well, go and earn a cross, love.
She
you
does.
had a job that you were good at.
She always did.
Yeah, but she's doing it by
Has the Princess of Wales ever done a day's work?
She was what, the Princess
of Wales, Kate Middleton.
She's shaking hands.
Her mum made a calculated move to get her to be the
We're not going to go into that, but the fact of the matter is...
She's shaking hands every blimmin' day, Kate.
Royal duty is no fun. I've met the royal family on certain occasions, and let me tell you, I have a great admiration. I do events, I do things. It's hard work. Let me finish. Shaking hands with people on a wet Wednesday in Watford, or when it's horrible and it's rainy, and you have to shake hands and you have to do these sometimes 3 and 4 events a day. It's exhausting.
We pay them.
It's exhausting.
So they should complain about that then.
It's not like the glamorous Hollywood life that
It's a gilded cage. It's a gilded cage. What we saw from that documentary is they have very limited freedoms. They have very limited freedoms.
Talk about it. I think it's very healthy that Meghan's come forward to say, actually, this was unhealthy.
They're loaded.
Cashing in.
She has cashed in. I think
she's off taxpayers.
I think she's lost a lot of support from that final 3 of that episode of that series. Right, Lionel Messi.
Down.
Did you watch the World Cup?
Yes, I did.
Oh, did you watch it? Did you like it?
I don't normally do.
No, me neither.
No.
So let's have 3 women who know nothing about football talking about football.
Well, I actually don't want to talk about the football. I want to talk about the fact that when he put...
Lionel Messi,
He's won. He's got the gold cup in his hand and he's off there. And
I think it's called the trophy.
The trophy, sorry. The trophy.
Oh, it is a cup, of course. It's a World Cup.
Well, kind of looks like a bald head.
Don't even know that, yeah.
Anyway, so he's holding it up. It's everything. He should be standing there in his Argentinian kit, holding it up. But the Qatari family was so quick to kind of put this bish on him, which makes him a king, which kind of detracted, I felt, from the football and put their stamp on it. And I thought that was unnecessary and unneeded.
Feels a bit naughty, doesn't it? It's a traditional men's cloak in the Arab world. Like you say, it's called a black bisht, and they put it over Messi so that all the pictures would have that.
So, look, when I saw it, I did think immediately, oh... But when I put it on my Twitter and on my Facebook, and my Muslim friends corrected me, they said, look, it's the greatest honour. It was from a king, they've made him a king. Now, football fans, they will love Messi. He is the king, he's the god. So I think, on reflection, it was a beautiful, respectful thing. They were basically kissing his feet and touching his feet.
It's much more calculated than that. It's much more calculated.
Oh, let me give you a comparison. You'll understand then, Tonya. So when my ex-husband won an Olympic gold medal in Athens, they put a crown of thorns on their head as a symbol, a lovely Greek symbol. How is it different?
Because this is the Olympic Games. Olympic Games, not the World Cup.
Well, this is Greek, the world.
And we have for years put olives, things of... braces of olives, crowns of olives on the heads, and that is the tradition of the Olympic Games originated in Greece. Okay?
But this
don't
is,
make the comparison.
This is
the
World
World Cup.
and Qatar
The Qatar
is the
family
world.
don't even have a football team.
But they are still the world.
But they pay for everything.
We're a global world.
It's about the money.
They've got the money.
It's back to the money. It's about money. To have spent £220 billion on this football and not have saved lives.
They did a great job.
Well, BBC host Gary Lineker, not somebody that we quote terribly often as getting it right, he said it was a shame that they covered his shirt in what should have been a magical moment. So, yeah, controversial. That had kind of passed me by a little bit yesterday. I think by that point, my other half said, can we turn the football off? The match is finished now. I wasn't allowed to watch that bit. I had to go and prepare for today. Right, TikTok and nurses. So, anger as TikTok locums boast of £17,000 a month wage checks because nurses are preparing to strike over pay. This is a bit of a strange story, Tonya Buxton. Do you support these nurses going on TikTok and boasting about how much they can make if they're not employed, but if they work as a locum, so on the bank system in the NHS?
I don't support it. But I don't any longer support the NHS the way it's run. And this is the biggest problem. I'm going to take it straight back to that again. 50% of the money that we put into the NHS goes to people that do not treat people. It goes to middle managers, it goes to admin staff, it goes to diversity managers, it goes to all of these things that are completely unnecessary. The NHS needs to be broken and fixed, and the nurses should be getting a fair pay. They should be getting it. But they were also people that did get their pay throughout lockdown.
Well, I think you're deflecting. Every time someone comes on here and they talk about diversity, we do need diversity. The money's not. It's not.
Don't need a manager.
It's not getting spent
over
on
100 grand.
This is actually a locum doctor. It's not a new thing. There's always been locums. Yeah. Locum doctors. There's always been locum agencies. The fact is the NHS is underfunded, not because they're paying diversity. It's because there's not enough staff. Because nobody wants to do nurses' jobs anymore. They're not paid enough.
But it's not underfunded.
We can't recruit.
The amount of money that our taxes pay to go into the... Isn't it 50p of every pound we pay for taxes, or something very close to that, goes to the NHS? It's not underfunded. It's badly broken run. There's so much corruption. A friend of mine who's a doctor said that she has to take someone's bloods for something. So she takes someone's bloods for something and the machine on her floor's not working. She goes upstairs and the machine on the above floor doesn't counter with this one. So it's a new machine.
Oh,
They
the
buy
inefficiency.
badly, the inefficiencies. The NHS should not be paying more for pharmaceuticals. It should be paying less than anyone else. But they're so inefficient and it's corrupt. It's corruption.
I think people are living longer. I think we've got an ageing population.
That's nothing to do with the
I think it is. They're taking up a lot of the beds. They're taking up... I'm not saying you can't live till you're older, but they're taking up a lot of beds. And I think that actually... the locum thing isn't a new thing. They will get paid, and actually, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you go on working in locum and you'll get paid that kind of money?
Yeah.
Whether it was a doctor, it was a nurse.
The figures,
I think strikers should be striking.
The figures are extraordinary. The difference between the doctors and the medics who are on the locum system as opposed to those. So, just to give you an idea, young doctors with rates of £60 an hour, which is charged back to the health service, a comparable NHS position would pay an hourly rate of £13. And it said that on these TikTok videos, there's one 26-year-old doctor telling her 6,000 few followers that she ends up being about £2,400 a month. But if you work part-time as a locum, you can make £60 an hour. Unbelievable. Right, I've been asking you about your comments on Gary Neville. As Sean has said, that he was not right to comment on UK politics. There's our Twitter result. Only 10% of you think that Gary Neville was right to comment on UK politics during the World Cup. Sean has said he's entitled to his opinion if he wants to air it on Twitter or politics. Be my guest. Rio says, I don't have a problem with him commentating. I just have a problem with what he said. And Dave says, I don't watch sports in my own language anymore. Turn the sound down. I'm not interested in anyone's political standing. Sports should just be sports. Right, thank you both very much today for joining me, Narinda and Tonya. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what we do, just tell one mate today, won't you? Just tell one mate, turn on GB News. Next is Mark Longhurst. I'm Bev Turner. I'll see you tomorrow at 10.
Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met's office. A mild Monday out there. Quite blustery, gusty winds. And most of us will see a little bit more rain as well. This area of low pressure is responsible. Weather fronts spiralling around it and the winds coming up from the south or the southwest. This time last week it was northerly winds. That's why we've got a complete switch around. Much milder air, but also wetter air. So it's a grey day for most. Not too much rain across eastern England until later through the afternoon. And Northern Ireland turning a bit brighter through the afternoon too. But the rain heavy and persistent for parts of Scotland, South Wales and South West England. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place here. But everywhere it's mild. Temperatures getting into the teens, perhaps even as high as 15 Celsius in one or two places. Last week we were struggling to get much above freezing. Stays mild and fairly soggy across much of England and Wales overnight. Further outbreaks of rain coming in here, but largely dry for Northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland. Just a few showers for Northern Ireland and the far northwest of Scotland. It will stay fairly breezy and it will be a mild night, very mild across the south. Temperatures further north dipping to single figures. But clear skies means for many it's a bright day on Tuesday. We'll start with cloud and rain across East Anglia and the southeast, but that should scoot away. There will be some showers for North Wales, northwest England, northwest Scotland, the odd one zipping through across Northern Ireland. Still quite breezy, but perhaps not as windy as today. And still quite mild, but not as mild as today. Temperatures generally a touch above average, 9 to maybe 11 Celsius. So some fine weather to come on Tuesday, but the rest of the week remaining fairly mixed. Still plenty of showers coming in through Tuesday evening across the west, and we could see some more rain then coming in overnight Tuesday night, which could take a time to clear away from eastern areas on Wednesday. As I said, chopping and changing throughout this week, staying quite mild in the south, but it will turn a bit colder further north. Bye for now.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news